Welcome to MyEduNest students. So today there is another paper of class 1 psychology which includes both chapter 1 and chapter 2. As earlier we had covered just chapter 1, now it is chapter 2 as well. So the pattern is same, MCQs, very short type, then 4 marks, 6 marks and the case study based questions. So as usual you can just take the screenshot of the questions. So start with section A. First question, a researcher is studying how students' study habits change when they are in a brightly lit room versus a dimly lit room. Here, the lighting of the room acts as a DV, which means dependent variable, IV, independent variable, extraneous variable, confounding variable. Second, while watching a horror movie, your heart rate increases and you start sweating. According to psychology, sweating is an example of overt behavior, mental process, subjective experience. Then, third question. An IT company notices a sudden drop in employee productivity and high stress levels. Which branch of psychology would be most equipped to solve this specific workplace issue? Just think about the answer without any option. Can you please tell me? So, the options are clinical psychology, counseling psychology, industrial psychology, or developmental psychology. Now, fourth question. If a psychological test yields the exact same score for an individual every time they take it, but it fails to measure what it actually claims to measure, the test is valid but not reliable, reliable but not valid. Both reliable and valid, neither reliable nor valid. Then fifth question, which perspective of psychology would argue that human beings are actively constructing their minds through social interaction and cultural environments? Behaviorism, psychoanalysis, constructivism, structuralism. Then 6. Assertion. The results of a case study cannot be generalized to the entire population. Reason. A case study focuses on an in-depth investigation of a single individual or a small group with unique characteristics. A. Both A and R are true and R is the correct explanation. Both A and R are true but R is not correct explanation. C. A is true, R is false. D. A is false, R is true. Then 7th, in an experiment, the control group is exposed to the independent variable. Reason, the control group provides a baseline to compare the behavior of the experimental group. Same, A, both A and R are true, R is a correct explanation of A. B, both A and R are true, but R is not the correct explanation of A. C. A is true but R is false. D. A is false but R is true. 8. You are conducting an interview where you have a specific set of pre-decided questions but you occasionally ask follow-up questions based on participants' answers. This is an example of a standardized survey, semi-structured interview, unstructured interview, naturalistic observation. The 9th, the brain and the mind are distinct entities. Which of the following statements best illustrates the concept of mind? Can be seen on an MRI scan, functional MRI scan. It has a specific physical structure and location. It does not have a physical structure but emerges through experiences. It gets physically damaged during a traumatic accident. 10th, before conducting an experiment on visual memory, Maya clearly explains the purpose of the study to her participants and asks if they agree to participate. Which ethical principle is she fulfilling? A. Confidentiality. B. Debriefing. C. Informed consent. D. Voluntary withdrawal. So these were the questions of section A. Now section B. Meera is high school student facing severe anxiety about her upcoming board exams. Differentiate whether she should visit a clinical psychologist or a counseling psychologist. Give one reason. This is very, you can say, very important question. Or there is another question that differentiate between psychiatrist and a psychologist. Next, explain the difference between a speed test and a PAR test with a brief example of each. Next, provide a real life example of a positive correlation and a negative correlation from a student's daily life. 14th, how did the Gestalt psychologists differ from the structuralists in their approach to understanding human perception? 15th, you are conducting a survey on teenagers' attitude towards cyberbullying. Name two demographic details you must collect to make your data meaningful. 16th, what is the purpose of debriefing in psychological research? Then section C. Section C and section D. Section C, during a study, a researcher observes children playing in a park from a hidden bench. A. Identify the specific method of inquiry used here. B. State one advantage and one disadvantage of using this method over bringing the children into a laboratory. 18th, psychology is often misunderstood by common sense. Support this statement by providing an example of a common sense notion about human behavior that psychological research has proven wrong. 19th, a psychologist wants to study the psychological impact of a recent natural disaster on the survivors of a specific village. Which research method should they use to get the deepest understanding of the trauma? Justify your choice with two reasons. 20th, briefly explain the three main goals of psychological inquiry: description, prediction, and explanation, using the example of aggression in toddlers. You need to give an example, then you need to explain it. Okay. Then section D, which consists of 4 marks. You have been asked to design a self-report questionnaire to measure screen time addiction among teenagers. A. Mention 2 open-ended questions and 2 closed-ended questions you would include. B. What is a major limitation of using a self-report method? 22nd, trace the evolution of the behaviorist perspective in psychology. Who founded it? What was their main argument against earlier school of thought? And how does behaviorism study human behavior? Then, 23rd, a psychological test must possess certain characteristics to be considered standard and scientifically useful. Discuss the concepts of reliability, validity, and norms in test construction. 24th, suppose you are conducting an experiment to see if drinking coffee improves memory. Formulate a clear hypothesis. B. Identify the independent variable and dependent variable. C. Suggest one extraneous variable you would need to control. Then section E. 6 marks. 25th. Psychology studies behavior, mental processes and experiences. Elaborate on this statement by explaining all 3 terms in detail. Support your explanation by applying these 3 terms to the scenario of a student nervously preparing to give a speech on stage. 26. Designing a research study requires following a systematic process. Detail the 4 major steps involved in conducting scientific research in psychology. Apply these steps to investigate the problem. Does peer pressure increase the likelihood of teenagers skipping school? Section F. Now this is a case study. Rahul is a sports psychologist working with the national archery team. Recently, the team's state player Amit has been missing targets he usually hits with ease. Amit tells Rahul, "My hands shake when I see the target. and I keep remembering my failure in the last tournament. Rahul decides to use an observation method to watch Amit during practice, followed by a psychological test to measure his anxiety levels. So, question A, what is the specific role of a sports psychologist in this scenario? B, identify one covert behavior and one overt behavior Amit is exhibiting. C, why is Rahul combining observation with a psychological test rather than just using one method? Now, the last question. Read the case study below and answer the questions. Dr. Singh is conducting a study on memory. He divides 40 students into Group A and Group B. Group A is taught a chapter using virtual reality headsets, while Group B is taught the same chapter using a traditional textbook. Both groups are later tested on their recall. After publishing the results, a journalist realizes that Dr. Singh never asked the students if they wanted to participate. They were simply forced to by their school principal. Now the questions are, which type of research method is Dr. Singh utilizing? B, identify the experimental group and the control group in this study. C, identify and explain the ethical violation committed in this research. So students, these were the questions which consist of 70 marks, and then answer key is also there in another video. I did not post the answer key. I did not just write the answer with the question, so that you can just after reading the question paper, you can just give the answers, and if you will having any doubt, you can refer to the answer key given in the another video.